Thanks for tuning in. I'm stoked you could join us this week on Beanie Talks. We're starting a new series called Like Me, and I'm ready to jump into it. I don't know about you, but I totally hate when things in life aren't fair. It's not a lot to get mad about, but it's something you get really frustrated with. I know I take really seriously the way I study and work really hard, and I've been in situations where it's like I'm working my best and then I don't get the best grade, and then I find out the person next to me got a better grade because they cheated. Or say like you're working all day, you're helping out around the house, you're doing chores, you're doing everything your parent asks, and your siblings not, and they get away with it. Like, what's up with that? This also happens in another way where I'll be doing great. I'll be like having an awesome day. I'll be like, hey, I'm gonna scroll a little on Instagram. So I'll scroll, have a great time, or I'll watch a couple Instagram stories, and I'll see one that just kind of really throws me off. And it's like, oh, they got to go there, or oh man, like they look really good, or ooh, I like that outfit. I want that outfit. Like, and they're just the silliest little things, but it like totally knocks you off your rocker, because like you could be having a great day doing your own thing, and then 10 seconds later you feel less than, you feel kind of disappointed, and that's like not fair. So the main thing I'm talking about here is comparison. So when we compare ourselves, like we go from feeling great or fine or whatever, and then we kind of feel miserable, or we feel unsettled, or we feel less than, because it's from what we can see in our perceptions online is, wow, they have the perfect life, they're so put together, they have the best body, they have a great family, like, but we often forget when we're comparing ourselves, when we slip into thinking that, oh, I'm less than, I have to live up to their perfection, or I want to be better, or I'm not good enough, or if I only had what they had. We try to maybe overachieve our perfect life, or maybe that those feelings of comparison can neutralize us into doing nothing, because why bother when I'll always be less than? Or we get trapped into playing it over and over in our minds. Maybe it becomes an anxious thing, or sadness, or even jealousy, or maybe it's a motivation to change your media or change yourself. We often forget, I often forget, that when I'm tempted to do comparison, or I feel comparison that I am doing within myself towards this other person, that I'm comparing myself against other people's curated, filtered, edited, planned out highlight reel of their life. So that's like not super great to remember. But another option is, in comparison, is we may slip into comparing ourselves to them, also known as judging. I know, especially right now with like COVID and the way people are responding to it, or even the way people are choosing to speak out on other hot topics, it's very easy, and we often think it's safe to just go, oh, well, at least I'm not them, or oh, why would they post that? And this is what Jesus calls as judgment, and especially if it's another brother and sister, that could be totally detrimental to ourselves. So online isn't just a space for us to go and be like, oh no, I feel sad about myself, but it's also a place where we can go and go, oh, well, at least I'm not them. So the point being, comparison is a very, very dangerous and prevalent practice in our culture that like almost we're so comfortable with it that we don't even often think twice about it, because so many people, especially culturally, it's just normal. We compare ourselves, or we want to be like them because that's how we stay trendy, that's how we stay cool, but there's healthy things to explore, but comparison always isn't the best mode of doing it, because we only leave feeling worse about ourselves. So that all being said, comparison, it's real, it's prevalent, it comes in different forms. Let's talk about Paul and how he dealt with comparison. So I say, why Paul? Who's Paul? Well, Paul, he was one of the early followers of Jesus. Awesome guy. He has a crazy come to Jesus story, and I totally recommend you reading it in Acts. But he had a huge influence because of his missionary work. He felt really called to go share the gospel in the way Jesus commissioned us to. And so he went around the whole known world at that time, sharing, going from town to town, like spending time there, and people were getting to know Jesus and learning to follow Jesus. So with all this work, he was establishing these relationships with all these different groups of people who viewed him as an authority figure. And so when he wasn't in the particular towns, he stayed in contact, and the only way they had back then, he would write letters. And so a good chunk of our New Testament are Paul's letters to those particular churches. And I guess, writing letters is kind of like our way of, hey, how are you? Or FaceTiming with someone, or keeping up with them in another way. So, but with these letters, he had grown to be pretty direct, and he usually was actually responding to a letter sent to him. We often don't think about that, which is really important when doing the nitty-gritty study of the scripture, especially in this type of genre, his letters. So he was super, super passionate about following Jesus and leading others to do the same. So while everything Paul did out of love, it's likely some people might have felt called out or attacked. Because they weren't measuring up. So in response, they kind of deflected and they lashed out back at him. Have you ever done that? I've never done that. I don't have a sibling. So they began to tear Paul down, and that was their strategy to feel better, to make him look worse. In other words, they were a little petty. But that all being said, let's look at 2 Corinthians to see how Paul chooses to deal with criticism. So we're in 2 Corinthians 10:2. Oh, don't worry. We wouldn't dare say that we are as wonderful as these other men who tell you how important they are. But they're only comparing themselves with each other, using themselves as the standard of measurement. How ignorant. Okay, I don't know about you, but it kind of seems to me, maybe in the Greek, maybe not, that there's a little bit of ancient sarcasm going on. He just was direct back at the criticism, pointing out that, like, you are comparing yourselves with others, which is not a very fair, right, or just, or even helpful way for you to live your life as a follower of Jesus. So in that comparison, it just creates a bigger struggle for self and self-worth, or even being in relationship and community with each other. So Paul's saying, in no uncertain terms, it's absolutely ridiculous to let your behavior and life be based solely on comparison to someone else's behavior or someone else's life. And it's even more ridiculous to spend time figuring out how you measure up to people just like you in order to make yourself look better. So if I were to sum things up, this is how Paul was kind of saying in this verse. Hey, look, comparison to any human to another human is ignorant idea, and it makes you look kind of silly. And also to back this whole conversation up with comparison, let's go take a look at the Old Testament in Proverbs, which was before Jesus' life, but still from God, a thought about comparison. And Paul would have actually probably had Proverbs in the back of his mind because he was an astute scholar and religious teacher before following Jesus. So he was very familiar with the Old Testament that we have now. And so what it says in Proverbs 4:23 is, above all else, guard your heart. From everything you do flows from it. So our hearts matter. They control. Well, we're talking about heart. We're not talking about the thing that's moving blood around our body. We're talking about our insides and how we feel and who we are and how we think. But we have to guard that. We have to guard our thoughts and the way we think about ourselves and the way we feel about ourselves. Not to falsely puff ourselves up, but so we can plainly see ourselves and we can plainly see what God is doing in us and see the beauty in us, and not always be stuck comparing ourselves or feeling less than. Because if we play the comparison game, there's no way to win. Even if you get better, even if you get fitter, even if you get richer, you will always feel like not enough. And I don't think that's what Jesus wants for us, to live in not enoughness. So I guess then, how do we combat comparison? I think it's what Proverbs is saying. The quickest way to stop it is to be aware of when we're doing it. And when we do it, be aware. And what does it mean to guard? I know for me, I have to guard the way I think about myself and my appearance. I can't compare myself positively or negatively to another person, but I have to pause when I do have that negative thought and go, I'm going to choose to be grateful about X, Y, or Z. Because it's really easy to just get so narrowly focused on that one thing that other person has better, to where you can't see plainly what you do have. And that is so much, and it's so beautiful and awesome and cool. So in essence, this whole Beanie Talk is, let's be aware of when we compare ourselves via in real life to others' posts, especially to others' posts right now in COVID. I know for me, even though I've learned how to deal with comparison right now in COVID, there's been times where I've jumped on Instagram and I've been like, oh man, like I should run like 10 miles a day. And you're like, that's not healthy. I want to take care of myself because my body is a gift, not because I want to be like said person or I want to do XYZ. So our decisions about our worth shouldn't be based on how we perceive or we measure up to another person. It's not easy to guard our heart, but we have to set boundaries. I know I have to set boundaries. I know I shouldn't spend endless hours scrolling on Instagram, and it's something you have to be intentional about. Boundaries just don't happen. You have to create intentionality. One of the boundaries that I have for myself is I have a time limit on my phone, and yes, it's easy to ignore the time limit, but one little trick that I found for having a healthy relationship with comparison via media is if you go in your settings on your phone and turn on color filters, you can turn your phone to black and white, so you're not as like compelled to constantly be on it, because like the colors actually does play with our neurobiology to keep us drawn in. And so that's just a little tip and trick I have in the practical sense of comparison on media. Not saying your phone should always be on black and white, but if you're being like, ooh, I really want to take a break from that, it's a super helpful tool. And also guard what kind of content you're consuming. It's like a diet. So if you're constantly consuming junk food, you're gonna feel like junk. And so it's not saying like, oh no, never eat ice cream again, or like, consume other people's media, but be aware, be balanced, have healthy alternatives, healthy options where you're investing in yourself via relationships or other activities or hobbies or community, just so that's not your only input of how to view yourself, but you are able to see yourself better when you do life with people and other things. Yeah, and also guard yourself when you interact with others who in your life who make you feel less than. I know out of our insecurity, especially in high school, it's not uncommon to find or even be the person that belittles other people because you want to feel better about yourself, instead of honoring and valuing the beauty that each and every single one of our lives carry, which is a lot. So this week, my challenge is I want you to pay attention to what you're thinking and feeling when you use media, or even what are the things that you find yourself comparing with. And I know there's no perfect solution, but even just being aware and bringing it to Jesus and being like, hey God, like I'm really noticing like that's where I'm struggling with comparison right now, or let's talk about this. And then when it does happen, be aware, guard your heart, guard how you feel. And at the main thing I want you to take away is don't compare your worth to someone else's post, to someone else's highlight reel. And also I want to propose, what would it look like for you in your life to begin to guard your heart when it comes to comparing your life to others? While it's a journey I think we're all going to be on for a while, I think it's one we ought to start now, because the way we think about ourselves is the way we feel about ourselves, and it becomes the way we act. And so I think it's really important as a part of our following Jesus, or learning what it means to follow Jesus, is to know what areas influence that. And for me, I know one area that's influenced my walk positively and negatively is how I compare myself to people. So I'm so proud of you guys for sticking in through this conversation, and I'm praying that God would just show you abundant grace, that you'd be able to have a clearer understanding of who you are and how awesome you are. And comparison doesn't have to be the thing that dictates how we feel about ourselves. I don't know if it was a mentor or a friend or something I read in a book, but one thing that I've always carried with me is comparison is the thief of joy. So I don't want comparison to take my joy any longer. All right, thanks for tuning in. You guys are awesome, and I'm stoked you could come to Beanie Talks. Can't wait to see you guys this Wednesday for, I think, movie night, which will be super awesome. There's more information about that on the eYTH Instagram. That all being said, see you guys soon. Bye.
To be loved by you.